you'd like to add before we go through the first question?
Thinking about Alicia, she ready for that action until she realizes it's only been a short period of time. It's just a slow build with the story. She's like, we've been doing all this for 26 weeks.
Like it hasn't been 26 weeks. And out here giving out the cookie away. You gotta wait on that a little bit.
Right. Make them work for it. All right. So our first question says, the way Chan interjected when the doctor asked Malia what was going on with her wrist was strange. What do you think the doctor was thinking? Malia seemed surprised as well by him speaking for her. I feel like because he knows Chan, right? So, I think he would know if Chan was a woman beater or not. Because if it was somebody else that didn't know Chan, that's probably would be the first thought. Like, what did y'all get into? Especially with him speaking for her and not letting her finish. That's like a classic sign of abuse, right? The woman's not able to because they don't want to her to say the wrong thing to implicate them. So. But since it's Chan's friend, it's kind of like, what's going on here? It's a little weird. So I'm pretty sure he'll probably ask him about it later on a personal note. But yeah, he's probably just like, okay, I'm gonna make a mental note of that.
Because, like, we wrote this a while back, but again, I don't like read the story all the time. So when I was reading through it, I was like, that would be kind of odd if you're asking a person how they hurt themselves and somebody else interjected and started talking for them. It is a classic sign of like an abuser. When somebody else is hurt, they can't speak for themselves because, like Kyrie said, they're afraid that you're going to give out too much information. You're going to say something that's going to make them look guilty and everybody's going to know you did it. So the look and kind of like he had some concern on his face, like, what is this? Sometimes you feel like people, right? And then when somebody does something, you're like, do I know you the way I thought I knew you? Or like, I've never known you to be a man who got physical. Now, this wasn't because of anything that Chan did. When we go back to Malia's arm and her wrist being messed up, that was because of that fight that took place at the graduation party with Erica and her homegirl, Jalisa. Okay. That's where that ugly bruise. Yeah. That's where the ugly bruise came from. But yeah, I think Malia was right for feeling frustrated and annoyed that he was speaking on her behalf. This is her body. Like I got to like, it also is like, I guess sometimes when people feel like they have to father you or protect you or whatever, they want to like interject. It's almost like how parents do. When you take your child to the doctor and the doctor starts asking questions, you start answering for that child because you're like, mommy knows best, daddy knows best. So Malia was definitely like, sir, I got this covered. Like, you don't have to answer for me. I appreciate the fact that you're so invested in my health, but I got this. So. So the next question is mine. It says, what were your thoughts on the doctor? I think we kind of went into he was annoying a little bit. I didn't care for him. Likewise, he seemed to have a lot of opinions on Malia and how she was able to live her luxurious life. Yeah, that got me too, He assumed Chan was financing everything. Do you think race factor? Again, like we were talking about before, we talked about, we know some things are going to be a problem when the family comes into play, but I don't think we necessarily talked about like what his friends were going to think about it. I think sometimes we think that our friends are as open-minded as we are. Like if I'm an open-minded person and I just live and let live, my friends are going to think like that too. But you have to realize like sometimes your friends aren't like that. Sometimes you have friends who are a little bit more on the conservative side, or they're moderate, or sometimes they're super to the far left. Like, so your friends don't always share your thoughts. Do I think race was a factor? I definitely think it was. because what, there's something that comes up later on, and he talked about like Chan typically dates a certain type of girl, and if this was the type that he normally dated, would he have been asking all these questions? I don't know, but I do definitely think that race was probably a factor in some of his attitude. Like he didn't have an attitude. I don't want to say like the doctor was rude. He wasn't rude, but you definitely could tell that he was definitely checking out things for his homeboy, making sure he wasn't in a situation where like Malia or anybody was taking advantage of him. But I want to know, like, had he made those assumptions about other women, or was he making these about Malia based on race? Who knows? What are your security?
Yeah, I agree. And, I wasn't thinking that this was a factor, but because she's a Black woman, you don't typically see a Black woman making that kind of money. And sadly, when you do, it's the automatic assumption, some nefarious activities were involved for her to get this kind of bread, so it might have been a little racy, So, but yeah, I guess I was irritated when he was like, saying that stuff, but then it was just like, man, that's your classic, like people just have these assumptions, so I'm not just him, but many other people. And, people are so haughty in Rose City. A lot of people are looking at Malia like, ain't no woman around here got that kind of money. It has to be coming from a man, so it's not really that seen in their community, and if you even take us back, a few decades, we haven't been seeing that kind of play, so it's a new concept, it's a new day, and we making new dollars. So
I agree with what you're saying, and so people do to look at Black women when they see that they're doing well, and it's like, well, what man's taking care of that for them? You head down to places like Atlanta, and if you head down to places like Miami and Los Angeles and Dallas and Houston and these other, even New York, there are women, who are Black and who are just killing the game, baby. They have their own independent businesses and they're making money hand over fist, and they can afford themselves. And it's not about what a man can do for them. So we definitely have to stop assuming that every time you see somebody and they're doing well, there's a man somewhere out there making it happen, because that's not necessarily like the case. But again, we have to be real. Stereotypes are very, very real. Stereotypes are extremely real. And it's like, it's 2024. What does that mean? That don't mean nothing. People are still very, very much racist. People are very much into typecasting people. They want to put you in a certain box, and then when you don't fit it, they're headed. I've had conversations with people, and they're like, "Was expecting to hear all that from her." Because you see what you see, but you understand like this is bigger than what you know. But again, like Chan made mention of that when his friend was asking these questions, he was like, "Oh no, she put herself through school. No, she did all this on her own, right? She's self-made. Did she get a little loan from her granddaddy? Absolutely. Like, why not? Like, why if I come from some people who have it, why not go to them to get it? You know what I mean? So as opposed to being and harassing the banks to give me a loan when we know 9 times out of 10, well, I'm not going to say 9 times out of 10 because I don't know that to be a fact, but we do know there's a significant issue with people of color trying to get loans for businesses, even when they have a good credit score and when their debt to income ratio is significantly low and the income's high and the debt is low, they still struggle because of systematic racism. But that's a whole other story for another day that y'all not ready for. Maybe you are though. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, that's what I had to say.
Okay, so our next question says, Dr. Chow implied Chan had a type and Malia didn't exactly fit what he had dated in the past. It seemed to piss Chan off that he brought that up. Do you believe people can only date those who are their type? Do you think Dr. Chow represents a certain way of thinking that Chan's family may embody also? Let's see. Do you believe people can only date those who are their type? Not people are free to date who they want to date, and they typically do. Like if you see the history of somebody's, dating life, you can typically point out a type, right? But some people like to explore and try different things, or if something wasn't going well with, just like myself, for an example, I had a list of what I thought the man was supposed to be, and put God first, go to church, don't wear baggy clothes, and not in athletic gear. Like I wouldn't even date anybody that would wear sweats outside of the house, and so it was just a lot of stuff, and that yeah, I ran into some terrible people with that list. And so after my third terrible person, I just threw that little list away, and I was really done. I didn't want anything from anybody. And my husband now, I never in a million years would have thought that he would be my husband, because he's everything that I never knew that would be perfect for me. So, and it just came with me, hey, let me try something different, because what I thought, wasn't working. What people would say type, he wasn't my type, and, we have a great relationship. So, I mean, yeah, people can, and definitely you should explore, open yourself up to different personalities and different things. You might learn something. Let me see. I think there was another question here. Do you think Dr. Chow represents a certain way of thinking that Chan's? Oh, absolutely. They're really strict on keeping things in the family. Keeping things in the culture, not incest, but in the culture. And so, and that's why we probably won't see Chan introducing Malia to his dad anytime soon. Because, we're going to see this conversation a lot come up with, anybody that Chan introduces Malia to, and be like, oh, that's Malia. Oh, interesting. Hopefully they'll have a little bit more tact than Dr. Chow. But she's black, So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
I love everything. And then you talking about having a list. It is important to be flexible. Like, there's nothing wrong with having like certain ideas that you make. If you're so rigid on everything has to be exactly like this list and this by music sheet, whatever. Anyway, if you're so strict and rigid about everything has to be exactly like what's on this list, you might miss out on like somebody who's really good for you, because you have to have somebody who fits this list. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about my list. When I was younger, I wanted a Renaissance man, honey. I wanted a Harlem Renaissance man. I don't know if I ever told you that, right? Girl, let me tell you something. You might have to edit this part, because do you know when I told my family, like my older brother and sister, I was like, when I think about because the way we were raised very early on to always think like marriage. Like it was no use of a friend, you having babies. And again, because we just came from very Christian, religious families, living together was not going to be an option. Having babies with somebody was just not going to be an option without marriage, right? So I'm thinking, at 16, 17, okay, I'm going to be getting married, and the type of man that I want to marry, I wanted to marry a Harlem Renaissance man. And my brothers told me, you ain't a Harlem Renaissance woman. And what? Like, who says? That's why I don't talk to those two. I don't talk to y'all. Okay, because you're just evil. You're just messy. I feel like, when I think about a Harlem Renaissance person, when people into poetry and music and just, that they embody the essence of what your culture is, and just like being proud about who you are, where you come from, and wanting to see their community grow and be enriched. I was like, that's the type of man I want to be with. I want to be with somebody, whatever, who's community minded. I want to be with somebody who's in love with work. I like words. Like me and Kyrie, we're such nerds. We both have like Pinterest boards where it's like all these like really cool words, and we're like, what's this? And we are just like, and we could just be on the phone for an hour and looking at words and talking about it, how the words make us feel. Like we get real like crazy with it. We love words. But I think if you're gonna be a writer, you definitely should be a person who's into words. But I had this whole idea in my head, and it just didn't come to pass. Like, there's still nothing wrong with having a Renaissance man. I didn't get one. However, I got somebody else who's been really, really amazing to me. You know what I mean? And so, again, you can't just stick to what you think you're supposed to have, because you might miss out on what God really had for you, But there's nothing wrong with aiming to be like, I want to be with somebody who has good morals, good values, good ethics. My husband does not like to read nothing, I have a crazy amount of books. Like, I have books everywhere in my bedroom. I'm just a book person. And he's just like, I can't get him to read nothing. If I tell him, read a chapter of this, or God forbid, if I ask him to read a page, he's going to fall asleep in the middle of reading that page. Like, he'll, Rita! Like, he's just not like, and I'm just like, how did I end up with a person who don't like to read? Love reading. Do that, right? But it's not about that. I found somebody who loves to cook. I thought that was pretty dope. A lot of guys don't like to cook, but there's a lot of dudes on IG that I follow and they cook right. So he likes cooking, and he's really fabulous at it. So I was like, listen, you may not like to read, but baby, you like to do some cooking, and that's perfect. I don't want to cook every day. So I have somebody who likes to cook. So like Kyrie say, throw away the list. But I think that there should be a list that you focus on, where it's like being truthful, being honest, being kind, being considerate, being generous, being hospitable. These types of things being trustworthy, being faithful, like making sure that whatever's on your list are core values that can't be negotiated. You might say, I want a man who's 6'3". Well, I mean, that'd be nice, but if he's not, I'm not going to throw him away in the trash. You ain't 6 foot. It's like you have some people who are really stuck at a certain place where they have to have it. And let me tell you something. There are some people who have stuck to the list and God gave them everything on the list, but there are some people who have stuck to the list and didn't get nothing. So you got to figure out how it look like between you and God. Am I going to get what's on the list, or should I just be flexible? But I thought what you said was awesome, and I really love that, because a lot of people are too afraid of compromising. Something like wearing sweats outside is a problem, because let's be honest, baby, like, who's gonna be out here in a 2-piece suit? Or like, but that's what my dad wore suits daily because of the type of business that he had. So we grew up with people always looking like they was on their way to church or work. So my mom didn't start wearing pants until maybe 10 years ago when there's slacks. Growing up, my mother wore dresses and skirts every single day because it just was considered to be wrong if a woman wore pants. So we're just very old. All right, let me look at the question to figure out if I'm getting everything. Yeah. Yes, I do think that some of what he was saying was just weird. I get it. He's his friend, and so he wants to make sure that like his boy is good. But to think that somebody shouldn't step outside of their idol thing is crazy. You should be open. I'm very open. I think my type is like about a type. It's more about a person's heart. It's more about a person's mindset. It's more about that as opposed to like the outward appearance. You have to be this, that. No. I mean, you have to be somebody that I find attractive, definitely. But there's not like a certain type of person it has to be. Do we think that Dr. Cho's or Chow's way of thinking is a representation of maybe what Chan's family would embody? Absolutely. I definitely think we're getting a little taste of some of what Chan and Malia are going to have to deal with. Now, of course, Malia doesn't know any of this stuff because the bros are talking amongst themselves. However, I think Chan is getting a real good glimpse of how his family might be, but like 1,000 times worse. So